I'm Steve Zurinsky, co-chair of Building Codes, and I'm here to introduce Hector Rivera, who's, it's very exciting to me to have someone talk about maps. And I imagine most of the architects in this room feel the same way. We have a few people who are not architects here. I see we have some people here from the Mayor's Office of the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and I also see the most important person in the room, Hector's mom. Mom, give a word, thank you. And, thank you. And I've been dealing with city agencies for, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. And every once in a while you come upon an agency or an entity that seems to be like the intersection of everything. And the Topographical Office is just that, and Hector is the center of everything. And I think he will explain that to us, and we'll certainly learn a little bit more about what he does for those of us who don't know. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Hector now. And then just everybody give him applause for him doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Hector Rivera. I manage the Topographical Bureau for the Manhattan Borough President's Office. We are the keepers of the city map for the Borough of Manhattan. And just to give you a brief history of the Borough of Manhattan city map, we're going to start with the beginning. And the beginning, it started with the Commissioners of Streets that was established in 1802. And the commissioners were Gouverneur Morse, John Rutherford, and Samuel D. Witt. And they worked with John Randall Jr. to create the 1811 Commissioner's Plan. The city map, technically, legally speaking, is the 1811 Commissioner's Plan that laid out all the avenues at 100 feet, all the streets at 60 feet, except for major cross streets. A lot of those major cross streets pretty much are the express stops on the subway from 14th Street, 23rd Street, 34th Street, and so on, moving up. And next slide. John Randall Jr., I can't read this. The state in 1811 approved the commissioner's plan that laid out all the street systems. And I can't read, sorry. I will just move out here. Laid out the street system that we know today, and there's about 3,000 legal alterations to that original commissioner's plan that the Manhattan Borough President's Office has within their records, and we've worked to digitize them and make them public to all city agencies and the public. Here is the Randall Farm map. The office worked with the Museum of the City of New York to digitize the entire collection of 92 sheets. These are readily available. You can go online and to Google the greatest grid in the Museum of the City of New York that will bring you to the full collection of the Randall Farm maps, which is the original survey that laid out the grid system we know today. It's in very good detail, and you could actually zoom into every single page and see the different marshlands and the streets and the existing houses that were there at the time. And in 1983, the state legislature authorized eminent domain to create Central Park and acquire the necessary land to develop Central Park. Originally, Central Park was going to be planned for the east side of the island of Manhattan, but due to the main source of import-exports of the city at the time, the property owners at the time had an ability to lobby the legislators and have them look for a different location. Central Park was originally laid out from 59th Street to 106th Street, and then later extended to 110th Street. The key parts of this map also laid out several other parks, Morningside Park and St. Nicholas Park, and if you could look through here, you could also see it indicates the elevation above grade, and you could see there's about 100 feet difference between the streets and why these parks were created. And And then we come to the consolidation of the 5 boroughs. Andrew Green was appointed by the state to consolidate and lead the consolidation. His original goal was basically to maximize the city's resources, which were the ports of the island of city of New York, and combine all 5 boroughs to create the city that we know today. Staten Island wasn't part of the original plan, but due to Brooklyn and Manhattan had enough population, but they needed greater land mass in order to acquire additional legislators in Albany. So they also acquired Staten Island to get the additional legislators. In 1916, the city established the first comprehensive zoning resolution. This was deemed comprehensive because every single part of the city of New York, this was after the consolidation, had to abide by the zoning resolution. And it basically laid out requiring buildings that would have to have setbacks after reaching a certain height. And it was calculated through a multiples, and it's indicated here. Then in 1961, the city entered in the zoning resolution that included floor area ratio. It was adopted also including public places for bonus FAR. And it also led to the creation of what we know today as vanity addresses, plaza addresses. And then in 1975, the city approved the ULURPS, the land use review procedure, uniform land use review procedure, and the idea was to create a more stabilized process, uniform process, and more open for greater transparency and better public input through there. Let's see. And then you had in the court 1989, Supreme Court ruled that the Board of Estimate was deemed unconstitutional, City versus Morris, and a lot of the responsibilities of the Board of Estimate were divided to the mayor and the city council, but the majority of the responsibilities that stayed with the borough president were to appoint community board members, appoint members to the city planning commission, as well as the Department of Education and other boards. The borough president's office also allocates a portion of the city's capital budget, as well as for borough needs, and makes ULURP recommendations and maintains a topographical bureau. Okay. And within the Topographical Bureau, there is a plethora of historic maps and resources that are used currently today by city agencies and the general public. Maps on file include historic records like the 1811 Randall Farm Map, legal alteration, damage map, legal grade maps, section maps, as well as monumentation maps that we have on file, and we work to share and digitize as much as possible to share with anyone that needs it and with the community. Legal grade maps or section maps show the legal width of the street as well as the elevation above sea level, and these are available online that we provide access to, and it will help when you're having a question of what's the elevation of your property or the area that you're working at, what's the potential for flooding. If not, we provide that. Then we have borough survey maps, monument maps. Currently, these are 3 different types of monuments. These were the original, then we had the updated, and then we've been working with DDC to actually install a lot more monuments within the northern part of Manhattan as they work on the street system. These monument maps are not available online. You would need to request them via email and submit the request because there are technically 2 different 00 points for the borough of Manhattan. You have Columbus Circle, which is 100 point, and then with the extension of the north of 155th Street, because the original commission's plan only went to 155th Street. There is another 00 for our survey maps north of 155th all the way to Marble Hill. And Marble Hill is still part of the City of New York, Borough of Manhattan. We also maintain legal alteration maps, and as you can see, this is a legal alteration map that was adopted in 2006, and it's pretty much almost at the completion of its development and built. Right now, the office is working with the Hudson Yards Development Corporation to establish addresses for the parkland on the northern part, which is 39th Street. So this is right around here. The city just finished acquiring and transferred over property for Parks Department to build parks up here within that area. This map maps Hudson Boulevard East, Hudson Boulevard West, as well as the parkland, Bella Absett Park between there. So this is from 33rd Street all the way to 39th Street. And this is being built as we speak. And as the city continues to move forward, we are working with city agencies to help make sure everything is built and moves smooth as possible. Okay. Part of what we do is we deal with house number verifications and assignments in the Borough President's Office. That's a two-step process for address assignments for all new buildings. The reason why we do this is to make sure that the building is completed and built to what it's originally planned. And if any alterations have changed, we make sure that the addresses match those alteration changes. So the type of requests we receive are new building applications where the office will issue a topo stamp and a reservation letter reserving the appropriate house numbers to your planned new building. We also issue verification letters to existing buildings. The building could be 150 years old, but what we do is when we verify the address, we make sure that every entryway that is used by the public has an appropriate house number so that 911 emergency services could data point and properly geocode it, because 911 could geocode within 2 feet of a doorknob. We want to make sure that we are able to provide that information so they could properly locate it and make it as quick as possible for 911 to respond to anyone in need of emergency. And we also do verifications for existing buildings that have no work application, and that's just to make sure that this is what's needed in order to get a new certificate of occupancy. The Borough President's Office makes sure that DOB does not issue a new certificate of occupancy without the proper verification to verify that the address that the new certificate of occupancy has is correct. And this is to help make sure that we clean up all discrepancies within the building's data. And for Manhattan, we pretty much do everything virtually, and we try to make everything accessible online so that you don't have to run around that much. And to submit your application, to submit an application with the Borough President's Office, you would email the PD1, PW1, and first floor plan, as well as any relevant information that is needed to apply for that house number verification or assignment, depending on where you are in your project. And then when we receive confirmation that payment is received, we will issue the appropriate letter based on your project. So if you're applying for a final house number, your building's built, the house numbers are up, then you'll get your final address assignment letter. If it's initially planned for a brand new building, you'll get the standard verification letter. We would also, the reservation letter, and we will also make sure that your lots are properly established and merged. So you would have to go to the Department of Finance to fill out the RP 602 form to merge or apportion the lots. As you see with the city moving forward, there are so many variables that can happen with development projects. You could purchase multiple lots and then have one of the buildings still have landmark status. So we would need to account for that as well. So when you merge the lots, we will make sure that your new development is filed under the correct block and lot number and that the appropriate address is for the property, and if there are any landmarks, those are retained as well. And that, The Borough President's Office created the Address Status Locator, and this is an online resource that allows you to track your development. And what we did is put it into like a color code where the blue indicates that it's a reservation, temporary, or work going on. It hasn't been closed out. If it's red, that means the letter has been issued for the final completed development. And what we do is anytime we get any letters we issue is uploaded to here so that it could be pulled when you're out and about. So if you're working on a particular job or a building, you could check the address, see if there's a official letter on file, and compare the ground floor plans and the addresses, and then we will work with you to make sure that each entrance or what you plan to do has a proper house number and your filings are done correctly. And then you have the Department of Buildings Finance. The Department of Finance is responsible for the lots within the block. So the Borough President's Office is in charge of the block dimensions and the legal width of the street. Department of Finance is in charge of the lot information within the block. So if any of the alterations, apportionments, or mergers are happening, you would have to go to the Department of Finance first, and they will issue you your temporary or your appropriate lot numbers for your project, and then you would bring those documents to the Borough President's Office, and we will establish a new slated address range or apportion the addresses appropriately if you were doing a lot apportionment. And this would happen if you had a property that had a building with a garage, and then the owner decides to apportion the garage area, maintain the existing building, and then sell off the garage. We will want to make sure that your existing building with all your records maintains the lot, and the garage will get a new lot number, so that we look to try to make sure that whoever is affected the most, and usually like occupied residential buildings, you want to make sure that nothing changes as much as possible because people are used to things, and it makes it easier and not cause any additional hardship on the individuals. So our office works with the Department of Finance to make sure that the addresses are associated with the correct properties and block and lots. And then you have the Department of Buildings that handles the actual building applications. Our office works with the Department of Buildings when it comes to it basically explains how to file, and with DOB now you create a lot username, login, and it's pretty much walks you through the process for applying or making any changes to getting permits. And then key changes that are to expect with the city that will affect future development, and this is going to affect so many properties within the borough of Manhattan. It's local law 97 that was approved by the city council in 2019. It requires that these buildings meet a certain energy efficiency rate, and if they don't meet it, they will be hit with penalties. And a majority of Manhattan's properties that are pretty much under 25,000 square feet or 50,000 square feet for multiple buildings within a lot are subject to these changes and rules, and they would have to update their records, otherwise receive penalties. And the city's got support where you can go to NYC Accelerator. You could go to that website and you could type in the address, and it will give you the full description and where that particular property stands regarding these local laws for energy efficiency. And this will affect a lot of the buildings within Manhattan moving forward. And we also are going to see that the city of Yes is going to make a dramatic effect on how many buildings are altered or changed within use. The city of Yes gives them a lot of as-of-right development within their existing structures, making it, I guess, easier for building more affordable housing or more housing in general to add to the housing stock, but it will also work on increasing environmental impacts and making more greener buildings. So between local law 97 that requires that these older buildings meet a certain energy level, and the city of Yes making it easier for them to build greater and bigger than their current envelope. The city is moving toward a lot more changes, and we need to be ready for that. And in conclusion, basically, it's under understanding the house number process for the borough of Manhattan is a way we track development throughout the borough, and we're able to get an idea of what is happening and what is needed within the city of New York. And thank you. I think I ran through this pretty quick. Any questions or concerns? I see. That's it. I really ran through this real quick. Sorry about that. Yes. Yeah, you're talking about 146th Street.
So the architect was confused because he was going to the building department with the setbacks from the old street, and the building department would not approve it.
Because there was no street. The street was demapped.
So I was working on that street for the city of Norfolk. So I went to the
They give you a.
department, and we had a meeting with the borough president, borough commissioner of the building department, and we explained to him,
Well, I issued out reservation letters for the planned buildings that were being built on the north side of that DMAP street.
Right. So
And-
then, basically, we were able to resolve this issue, but I was wondering, what is the process for demapping streets?
Okay,
And
for
sometimes
demap-
in the Queens, where I live, there's some roads that were demapped for making parks, things like that.
Well, to demap or change anything within the city map, it needs to go through the EULA process. And the EULA process starts off with this. So the EULA starts off with the city planning commission issuing a certification, and then it goes through the community boards for review, and then from there, the borough president has its ULURP recommendation, and if it's, then it goes to the city planning commission to vote on it, have public hearings. If the city planning commission approves it, then it goes to the city council to have public hearings and vote on it and move forward. And if the city council approves it, it then gets to be implemented, but the implementation takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. So when the map is approved, it takes time for the city to acquire and make the changes to these city streets. And sometimes when the city demaps a street, it's demapped for the planned development of, for instance, Harlem Hospital. So they demapped the street to build Harlem Hospital, but they never closed out the portion of it on the easterly side of it, so it looked like a street. People thought it was a street, but it was not a street anymore because it was demapped and turned over to the hospital. The hospital then ended up making its alterations and changes. Piece by piece, they've been building and renovating portions of that hospital. So if you, if you go to the address status locator, you could actually track all the letters that have been issued by our office and see the changes that have occurred and what's the plan for, what addresses are reserved for the planned new building on the north side that you're talking about. Because it'll have an ambulatory, it has several things that they're building within there. So once the city demaps it and the map is approved, it would have to go through a new ULURP process in order for the city to remap it. Because the key things that you need to map a street are the width and the elevation. So what is the width of the street and what is the elevation to make sure that the planned new street goes within the grades of the existing street system so that there's no water accumulation and it grows into the city's drainage. Yes?
This might be out of your purview, but I have two questions about two pieces of property. There has been talk in the Regional Planning Commission about incorporating, I call it Randall's Island, into either Westchester or the Bronx as part of an expanded LaGuardia Airport. Is that something that walks in, that enters into your purview? And in addition, JFK is doing a monumental expansion of 2 million cubic yards of rock infill in Jamaica Bay to relocate and expand the nexus of their airport out into the bay so they can redevelop all the approaches. Is that something that your
Well,
group
with
gets involved in?
Randall, Ward's Island,
Yeah.
they would need to, it's part of Manhattan, so
Yeah.
it's, that's part of the boundaries for the borough of Manhattan. It's within the boundaries. In order to change that, it would have to be through, I believe, the Army Corps of Engineers to designate which county it goes under. But usually, they do not take land from one county and give to another county. And for the expansion of JFK Airport, it would be within the Army Corps of Engineers to set the pierhead and bulkhead limits for that area. So it can be established and they could reevaluate it and then adjust it as needed based on their findings. Anybody else, any other questions?
Can you talk about the vanity address process?
Okay, so the vanity addresses started with, originally they started with plazas, and that was part of boosting development within the borough of Manhattan, city of New York. Currently, we try to discourage vanity addresses, but they are still issued. We consider anything that rearranges the natural order of house numbers a vanity address. So when you take an avenue address and bring it around the corner, and put it on the street side, that is considered a vanity address, and we require directional signage. And as long as that number is not completely out of sync, you may get your request approved. Now, the difference between naming a building and vanity addresses are different. So if you if an owner decides to name their building 123 ABC, it's not a name of a city street. We have no authority to do it. It's not on the city map. So they would have to use their standard mailing address. And what a mailing address is, it's the house number plus the street that that entrance fronts is what creates the address for the house numbers. So for vanity, if you're looking at anything in particular you're questioning, so you have certain buildings that will name like the Empire State Building. Hudson Terrace. Hudson Terrace is on Varick? Hudson Terrace? I don't know about that one, and it's and they should not be receiving mail within Hudson Terrace. So they could call the development or the site Hudson Terrace, but they would have to use whatever address is basically slated for those properties, whatever street is the closest street that it fronts. Yes?
NYU back a couple years ago built 0 Irving Place.
And how do you get first of all, it's on 14th Street. It's at the base of Irving Place.
Yeah.
But how do you get a 0 number?
Well, that was with technology being put in place, and those were there are only 2 buildings that have 0. You got 0 Bond and 0 Irving Place. And the system with, the city asked that we do not issue any more 0 addresses after those 2 were committed. So 0 Irving Place was issued because there used to be a PC Richards there. It was part of a new development. And the development idea was to provide public access or provide technical resources to small businesses like mom and pop stores so that they could upgrade to be using new digital technology. So that was the goal and that was the condition for the reservation for 1 Irving Place, because it was at the foot of the end of Irving Place, but it was on 14th Street and there were no numbers and they wanted the Irving Place. And there is actual signs of Irving Place on the south side of 14th Street. and they needed to post their directional, their signage visible so that it can be. So the street is Irving, but 0 is, it's a unique aspect because there was only 3 numbers within the slated address range of that particular property, and they're putting in 4 entrances. And then you had the 0 Irving Place was supposed to be exclusively for those floors that were going to provide small businesses with like technical educational classes to teach them how to upgrade from the old cash registers to new technology and accepting new technology into their small business to help them be sustainable. So that one's for 0 Irving Place is a valid approved address.
Is there a requirement that an address be, the entrance, an address is labeled like 1 Irving Place, actually be on Irving Place, or just has to have a facade somewhere at Irving Place, even if the door is around the building?
Well, if it's fronting Irving Place and it's within there, then it has as a right to have that 1 Irving Place for the doors fronting Irving Place. Now, if the same building has a door on the side, say 14th Street, and they want that door to be considered 1 Irving Place, then they would have to apply for a vanity address and invest in directional signs that our office will approve to make sure that there is no confusion and the general public finding that location for 1 Irving Place, because that entrance is no longer fronting Irving Place, even though the property borders the Irving Place.
Do you get requests from Apple and Google and these other mapping apps to identify where the address entrance actually is?
No. They use Google Guides and people that voluntarily post the information. Google is very flawed in their things because if you invest in 3 different dummy websites that say you're 1, 2, 3 ABC, Google's going to have their algorithm say, oh, that's 1, 2, 3 ABC, regardless if it's not true or not. So there's some discrepancies, and Google can't keep up with the city because the city consistently changes its facade, its frontage. The storefronts are always merging, always changing to meet the needs of the community, or we try to do our best.
You send notification to the post office when an address is established.
Yes.
You send it to UPS as well? Because it seems UPS maintains a database that a lot of people...
No, UPS uses the FDNY database, which is the same one that is used by the post office. So what I do is I send it to the post office directly, but the data is, they use the post office database. So it's all, I've researched and made sure that, because technically UPS and FedEx are private entities that are not basically affiliated with any government responsibility except for following the laws and the rules. But the United States Postal Service is a technically, it's a government-assisted agency, I would say.
Do you want to talk for a moment about some of the more interesting issues that come with the super tall buildings or the AOL Time Warner Center when you're having to trying to come up with addresses and blocking lots, have one thing on top of the other, and what that does?
Well, the Time Warner Center it was a unique building with different lobbies throughout the entire place and having different lobbies access only certain portions of that building. So the building, I don't recall the exact number of stories it is, but it has about 60-something stories, and certain lobbies within that structure only occupy 5 to 10 stories of that building. So that one needed so many different unique vanity addresses, and they pretty much went up to Columbus Circle, pretty much. Originally, it was the Time Warner Center, and that was requested to be rescinded because the Time Warner don't exist no more. And So we gave it one Columbus Circle once the museum agreed that they don't want one Columbus Circle. So the museum that's on the south side chose to just use two, and they had no affiliation with one, so they agreed to release that number to the what former Time Warner Center building. Yes? Oh, either of you?
So with regard to the addresses, how do you then make sure that the buildings actually do post their address once they're designated an address? Seems like there's a lot of properties that have no address numbers on their buildings.
Well, first is to get an official letter on file properly assigning the address or verifying the address to there, because sometimes property owners change over years and they don't know that, and they start to end up with just one address. So when you have a building like 1333 Broadway and all the commercial, it has 6 commercial spaces in front and all of them are using 1333 Broadway, I have to explain to them that that's not correct. Each entrance needs its own unique house number. If they're occupied, we work with them and we just go 1333A, B, C, but the primary entrance keeps the solid number. So the post office and 911 respondents know that the solid number will be the main lobby, and then the A, Bs, and Cs are usually just retail commercial access that don't have an egress to the lobby. So it's to ensure that anyone having a stroke, heart attack, anaphylactic shock gets the fastest emergency response in the event of an emergency.
Question.
To him and then, yeah, go ahead.
Can you just comment on the relevance and the importance of the Vreeland maps of the city, what I call the water and rock maps, which we sometimes use when we find we have leaking basements and things like that?
Oh, I didn't hear which maps?
Vreeland, B-R-E-E-L-A-N-D, Vreeland maps of the city.
The Breland map system?
Yeah, the rocks and the marsh streams.
Oh, the
and
Veely
water.
map. The Veely map is the 1865 Veely map lays out it shows all the marshland and a lot of the streams that exist underneath the city. And if you could actually match it to the Randall Farm maps. So if you look at the Randall Farm maps and you overlay them, they pretty much match all the water courses within there. So it's one of the most unique maps. I didn't include it in here, I should have. It's the 1865 Veely map that lays out, it shows all the water courses, streams, and marshland. And I have it actually on my map room wall. It's one of the ones I use in reference when it comes to someone saying they have a leaky basement or water draining through their property. Yes.
Is that online?
Yeah, so if you go to manhattantopographical.com and go to the 1865 historic map, it would be there to view, and you could actually zoom in and see in great detail where the marshland is, where the streams go throughout the entire borough of Manhattan.
Can I ask a Brooklyn question?
You could ask, I don't know if I could answer,
Okay.
but.
So when you go along Halsey Street, when you get kind of east, the house numbers do not line up across the street. They're like 30 numbers apart, and I always wondered how that happened. Like they'll be at 450 across from a 415.
I don't know because it's Brooklyn, but I could assume it's because each property has a slated address range. So when the house numbers were originally laid out, it was one number for every 15 to 25 feet of frontage of a particular street. And as the lots merge or apportioned, as they merge, the numbers expand, the range expands, and then the owner will choose, oh, I like the highest number in the range, and that's how you end up with the jumping of numbers as long as it stays in order and consistently moves up. So let's say you're in right here where we are now, there's a lot of small lots that have 15-foot frontage, and if someone were to purchase 5 of those lots to merge them, then the slated range would be established. And if they choose, oh, we're going to put one entrance and we want the highest number within that range, it will cause that jump in numbers.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Let's see.
Hi, can you speak about buildings that have entrances through the block, or maybe on three different streets? What happens then? What are the options, and what is the process to go through? Thank you.
What do you mean through the block? I'm sorry.
If a lobby or an atrium has entrances, say it's located in the middle of the block, and it's entered on both streets, on the south side of one street and the north side of the other street, for example.
Okay. So
How the house numbers assigned? By the
the
street?
house numbers are, we will work with the owner to see which one they prefer, what addresses they prefer, but one will be deemed the primary, the other would be the secondary point of egress. So if it was a through block, for instance, we're working on the renovation of the Waldorf Astoria. So the primary address for the Waldorf Astoria is going to be 301 Park Avenue, but they also have a through lobby on the other side. Actually, it's a super block, so any part of the Waldorf Astoria has surrounded by all four blocks, all four streets. So you could access, and they have egress throughout there, and they have the center lobby. They're going to be doing a renovation. It's almost completed, where portions of it is going to be actually for sale on residential units, and then they also have the portion that's historically maintained for the hotel. And there's going to be a bunch of commercial spaces along the side as well. So for mail purposes, they'll designate what is the primary, and that's usually what would be listed on the certificate of occupancy. So a property can have a bunch of addresses. Doesn't mean all those addresses are used for mail. Some of them are just assigned for 911 to geocode and know what entrance to access to get to someone in need as quick as possible.
So, in terms of Broadway, which is at diagonal to the city grid, what was the reason for that? You have any?
Well, Broadway wasn't part of the original grid plan. Broadway was originally an old Indian road, and it was basically, and it wasn't part of the grid. So as it consistently was being used, it was later integrated into the city's plan. So just because the 1811 Commissioner's Plan was approved in 1811, doesn't mean that the grid was built. It was a plan, and it took time to build. As the city worked to build those streets, they ran into certain environmental issues that caused them to make certain changes to the city plan. So originally, the 1811 Commissioner Plan was just to level the entire island to just a few feet above sea level. And this is before they realized, the elevation of the sea level is rising. So if you notice in downtown Manhattan, it's more of a level kind of street system. It's more level and even, but the further you go up north, there's a lot more grades going on. So when the Commissions of Streets was changed to the Central Park Commission ended up looking at the environmental soil, and when they hit bedrock is when they realized they had to make changes to that grade and make changes to the grade and expand the street system in that way.
So who's the real architect or planner for the Manhattan plan? Whose name is like Commissioner's Plan? Who was the city planner?
I didn't hear you, sorry.
The city planner who is responsible for doing the master plan for Manhattan, do you know who that person was?
For the master plan of Manhattan, well, people would think they consider John Randall Jr. one of the master planners that laid out the grid system. And then you also have Andrew Green that made a significant contribution to the way the city is formed today. And right now, we look at the process. Through the Euler process, it goes through, you have community input, and then city planning works with the city agencies to implement what has been approved.
Yeah, you're just implementing what was in this master plan that was approved in 1811, right? Or, I was thinking maybe, like Washington, D.C., you have Charles L'Enfant. He did the master plan for Washington, D.C. based on the Paris master plan. Do you have somebody similar who can, people don't know who is the master planner for Manhattan?
Somebody you want to blame?
Well, it's up for debate. Yes. Yeah.
You had showed a historic zoning map of the city. Does the Borough President's Office maintain the current zoning maps?
Oh, the zoning-
Post 61, or are you involved in that process of maintaining those maps?
No, the zoning maps are maintained by the City Planning Commission. So the Department of City Planning maintains the zoning maps. The Borough President maintains the street map. It establishes what is a legal street, if it's, or the block dimensions.
Do you ever find a discrepancy between those maps?
Well, not really. Only with the little alleyways where city planning may deem a private street as a street, but there was no actual, I would find information that, it doesn't have taxes on it because it's a shared street responsibility of the abutting property owners. So a lot of the alleyways, or down here, the historic little alleys that were originally laid out for horse and buggy behind the properties.
Thank you.
In its development, did Manhattan ever have a formal alleyway system like Boston? Or the alleys that exist just happened because that developer felt like putting one in?
I don't think so. I don't think we have no, we don't have a formal alleyway system. They're
It's never
just
considered in the history
no.
of maps you've seen.
Yeah. The only thing I would see would be the little alleys that were formerly horse and buggy locations, but a lot of the way that the alleys were built in the back of the buildings were based off of zoning and the required setbacks. And so people would assume that you have a row of housings and their property behind it, but there is no, if it's not mapped, I wouldn't have any record of it.
What would you like to see for the future of Manhattan? What would you like to see for the future of Manhattan Island?
I would just like to see it continue to grow and be more accessible and more of a walkable city, I think, is one of the key elements that will keep us striving and growing to be able to, yes.
One question. Can you describe what you did describe to me at one point, how the state allotted people to be able to expand the city?
Yes.
Colonial government, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about
Those were one of the maps I did not include in my presentation, and I should have. It was basically the UN maps that we have on file that they're still binding, and we haven't had them removed and preserved yet, like we had the Randall Farm maps. Those are one of the ones that we are going to be looking at doing. But basically, it will show the land underwater and how the property of the island of Manhattan expanded to what it is today. I should have included it in my presentation. But the city and the state would allocate portions of land to individuals and require that these were people that, shoreline properties, and they will basically allocate it to individuals, and the requirement of that individual would be to shore up and the boundaries to allow for landfill. And this is early 1800s, where they would have the city town crier run out and say, everyone dump their garbage at this location, this pier. And that's how a lot of the shoreline properties were built out in the borough of Manhattan. I mean,
Any other questions?
any other questions?
So the subway system, was it related to the master plan at the beginning, or was it like an afterthought?
Well, the subway system originally was, there were 4 different major subway companies. You had the Harlem River Railroad Company, the Hudson River Railroad Company, and I don't recall the others, but they were originally elevated. And when the city and the state consolidated and formed the MTA is when they really started moving into underground railroads and eliminating the elevated railroad systems that were throughout the borough of Manhattan as well, like you see in the Bronx.
Are there any requirements or clearances for the seawalls, and how are they categorized as the structures, they're like 8-foot wall, concrete walls, like on the East River? How are they, what are the restrictions and clearances for those things?
Well, the seawalls are, they would have to follow the guidelines of the Army Corps of Engineer, and the FDR itself is built on piers, so that's not really like full landfill. So it's a giant pier that is out there, and then the seawall is built to the, along the bulkhead line. So, and then whenever, like even during Hurricane Sandy, a portion of the seawall of the FDR actually collapsed, and the city did what it needed to make sure that the FDR didn't fall into the ocean as well. So they did an emergency repair for the seawall along the FDR between like 96 to 106th Street. And you could see from either the Veely map or the Randall Farm map that there used to be a giant stream called Harlem Creek that went right into, all the way to 5th Avenue from the east side.
At 96th Street?
Yeah, it started between 96 and 106th Street. You could see, this shows right here, this technically is 5th Avenue, and this is 3rd Avenue over here. So you could see this is 106th Street, and then this is the Harlem Creek that would go underneath a lot of the city. So I guess with Hurricane Sandy coming in, it actually pushed that water, and then with the pullout, it caused the portion of the seawall to collapse.
Can you spell that Veely again?
Veely?
Veely map.
V-E-I-L-E? Veely? V like Victor, E-I, Veely. You could actually, I'll show you. That's, you'll find it. You have a copy of it, the Veely map, right? Veely. Any other questions and comments? All right. Yes, come ahead. Well, thank you for taking the time to come and listen to my presentation.